I'm going to read to you from my most recent novel, Sweet Tooth. I'm not going to say too much about it, but it is necessary to say just a little. Its heroine is one Serena Froome. She's 22 years old. She's the daughter of a bishop. While at university, she was drawn into work for the intelligence services, who are over our heads as I speak. I don't know how it was in Denmark, but in Britain in the early 1970s, before the women's movement really had got going, women played a very lowly role in the intelligence services. They weren't allowed to be promoted beyond a certain point. It was held, I think, an assumption very strongly held in the upper regions of MI5, that women couldn't keep secrets. And we had good reason to think of that, because of all the people who had betrayed our country, the names are Philby, McLean, Burgess, Blunt, Cairncross. All of them were men. So you can see this was not an empirical matter. Anyway, she's had a rather frustrating time working for MI5. But finally, she is sent on a mission. MI5 wished to help draw in a number of writers, journalists, and one novelist to help set the cultural tone in celebration of democracy and whatever they thought would help them in their cultural struggle against the Soviet Union. The Cold War wasn't only a matter of nuclear weapons, it was also a battle for hearts and minds. So Serena is sent down to Brighton on the South English coast to offer a stipend, a yearly grant to a young promising writer that MI5 think might suit their purposes. And she's going on the basis that she's representing a cultural organization. And in fact, the intelligence services, CIA and MI6 in particular, did fund many such cultural fronts during the whole of the Cold War. One of the strange paradoxes being that to promote the open society, you had to do this in deep secret. It was an absurdity, which actually is what's drawn me into this subject matter. So, because this is a spy novel, and Serena is a spy, and she's sent to offer money to a young man who's a promising writer, we know in our hearts that they must become lovers. But that bit you can read for yourself. So it was a pleasant routine, a break in routine, to travel down to Brighton one unseasonably warm morning in mid-October, to cross the cavernous railway station and smell the salty air and to hear the falling cries of herring gulls. I remembered the word, gulls, from a summer Shakespeare production of Othello on the lawn at King's. A gull. Was I looking for a gull? Certainly not. I took the dilapidated three-carriage Lewis train and got out at the Fulmer stop to walk the quarter mile to the red brick building site called the University of Sussex, or, as it was known in the press for a while, Balliol by the Sea. I was wearing a red miniskirt and black jacket with high collar, black high heels, and a white patent leather shoulder bag on a short strap. Ignoring the pain in my feet, I swanked along the paved approach to the main entrance through the student crowds, disdainful of the boys, I regarded them as boys, shaggily dressed out of army surplus stores, and even more so of the girls with their long, plain, centre-parted hair, no makeup, and cheesecloth skirts. Some students were barefoot, in sympathy, I assumed, with peasants of the undeveloped world. The very word campus seemed to me a frivolous import from the United States. As I self-consciously strode towards Sir Basil Spence's creation in a fold of the Sussex Downs, I felt dismissive of the idea of a new university. For the first time in my life, I was proud of my Cambridge connection. How could a serious university be new? And how could anyone resist me in my confection of red, white, and black, intolerantly scissoring my way towards the porter's desk where I intended to ask for directions? I entered what was probably an architectural reference to a quad. It was flanked by shallow water features, rectangular ponds lined with smooth riverbed stones. But the water had been drained off to make way for beer cans and sandwich wrappers. From the brick, stone, and glass structure ahead of me came the throb and wail of rock music. I recognized the rasping, heaving flute of Jethro Tull. And through the plate glass windows on the first floor, I could see figures, players and spectators, hunched over banks of table football. The Students' Union, surely. The same everywhere in the world, these places, reserved for the exclusive use of lank-headed boys, mathematicians and chemists mostly. The girls and the aesthetes went elsewhere. As a portal to a university, it made a poor impression. I quickened my pace, resenting the way my stride fell in with the pounding drums. It was like approaching a holiday camp. She finds her way eventually down many corridors to the room of Tom Healy. Now, Serena has been diligently reading the short stories of Tom Healy, and she's almost, through the stories, half fallen in love with him already. With a pearly pink painted nail, I tapped lightly on the door, and at the sound of an indistinct murmur or groan, pushed it open. I was right to have prepared myself for disappointment. It was a slight figure who rose from his desk, slightly stooped, though he made the effort to straighten his back as he stood. He was girlishly slender, with narrow wrists, and his hand, when I shook it, seemed smaller and softer than mine. Skin very pale, eyes dark green, hair dark brown and long, and cut in a style that was almost a bob. In those first few seconds, I wondered if I'd missed a transsexual element in the stories. But here he was, from the stories, a twin brother, smug vicar, smart and rising Labour MP, lonely millionaire in love with an inanimate object. He wore a collarless shirt made of flecked white flannel, tight jeans with a broad belt and scuffed leather boots. I was confused by him. The voice from such a delicate frame was deep, without regional accent, pure and classless. He said, "Let me clear these things away so you can sit." He shifted some books from an armless soft chair. I thought, with a touch of annoyance, that he was letting me know that he had made no special preparations for my arrival. "Was your journey down all right?" he said. "Would you like some coffee?" The journey was pleasant, I told him, and I didn't need coffee. He sat down at his desk and swiveled his chair to face me, crossed an ankle over a knee, and with a little smile, opened out his palms in an interrogative manner. "So, Miss Frome, it rhymes with plume, Froome, but please call me Serena." He cocked his head to one side as he repeated my name. Then his eyes settled softly on mine, and he waited. I noted the long eyelashes. I'd rehearsed this moment, and it was easy enough to lay it all out for him, truthfully. The work of Freedom International, the organization that Serena is fronting. Its wide remit, its extensive global reach, its open-mindedness and lack of ideology. He listened to me. Head cocked, head still cocked, and with a look of amused skepticism, his lips quivering slightly, as though at any moment he was ready to join in or take over and make my words his own or improve upon them. He wore the expression of a man listening to an extended joke, anticipating an explosive punchline with held-in delight that puffs and puckers his lips. As I named the writers and artists the foundation had already helped, I fantasized that he had already seen right through me and had no intention of letting me know. He was forcing me to make my pitch so he could observe a liar at close hand, useful for a later fiction. Horrified, I pushed the idea away and forgot about it. I needed to concentrate. I moved on to talk about the source of the foundation's wealth. Max thought Haley should be told just how rich Freedom International was. Everything I had said so far had been the case, easily verified. Now I took my first tentative step into mendacity. I'll be quite frank with you, I said. I sometimes feel Freedom International doesn't have enough projects to throw its money at. How flattering then, Haley said. Perhaps he saw me blush because he added, I didn't mean to be rude. You misunderstand me, Mr. Haley. Tom, sorry, I put that badly. What I meant was this. There are plenty of artists being imprisoned or oppressed by unsavory governments. We do everything we can to help these people and get their work known. But of course, being censored doesn't necessarily mean a writer or sculptor is any good. For example, we found ourselves supporting a terrible playwright in Poland simply because his work is banned. And we'll go on supporting him. And we bought up any amount of rubbish by an imprisoned Hungarian abstract impressionist. So the steering committee has decided to add another dimension to the portfolio. We want to encourage excellence wherever we can find it, oppressed or not. We're especially interested in young people at the beginning of their careers. And how old are you, Serena? Tom Haley leaned forward solicitously, as if asking about a serious illness. I told him. He was letting me know he was not to be patronized. And it was true. In my nervousness, I had taken on a distant, official tone. I needed to relax, be less pompous. I needed to call him Tom. I realized I wasn't much good at any of this. He asked me if I'd been at university. I told him and said the name of my college. What was your subject? Serena actually studied mathematics and was hopeless at it. I hesitated. I tripped over my words. I hadn't expected to be asked, and suddenly mathematics sounded suspect, and without knowing what I was doing, I said, English. He smiled pleasantly, appearing pleased at finding common ground. I suppose you got a brilliant first. A 2-1, actually. I didn't know what I was saying. A third sounded shameful. A first would have set me on dangerous ground. I had told 2 unnecessary lies, bad form. For all I knew, a phone call to my college would establish there had been no Serena Froome doing English. I hadn't expected to be interrogated. Such basic preparatory work, and I'd failed to do it. Why hadn't Max thought of helping me towards a decent, watertight personal story? I felt flustered and sweaty. I imagined myself jumping up without a word, snatching up my bag and fleeing from the room. Tom was looking at me in that way he had, both kindly and ironic. My guess is that you were expecting a first, but listen, there's nothing wrong with a 2-1. I was disappointed, I said, recovering a little. There was this general weight of expectation. Our eyes met for a little more than 2 or 3 seconds, and then I looked away. Having read his stories, knowing too well one corner of his mind, I found it hard to look at him in the eye for long. I let my gaze drop below his chin and noticed a fine silver chain around his neck. So, he said, you were saying writers at the beginning of their careers. He was self-consciously playing the part of the friendly Don, the teacher coaching a nervous applicant through her entrance interview. I knew I had to get back on top. I said, look, Mr. Haley, Tom, I don't want to waste your time. We take advice from very good, very expert people. They've given a lot of thought to this. They like your journalism, and they love your stories, really love them. The hope is, and you, have you read them? Of course. And what did you think? I'm really just the messenger. It's not relevant what I think. It's relevant to me. What did you make of them? The room appeared to darken. I looked past him out the window. There was a grass strip and the corner of another building. I could see into a room like the one we were in, where a tutorial was in progress. A girl not much younger than me was reading aloud her essay. At her side was a boy in a bomber jacket, bearded chin resting in his hand, nodding sagely. The tutor had her back to me. I turned my gaze back into our room, wondering if I was not overdoing this significant pause. Our eyes met again, and I forced myself to hold on. Such a strange dark green, such long childlike lashes and thick black eyebrows. But there was hesitancy in his gaze. He was about to look away, and this time the power had passed to me. I said very quietly, I think your stories are utterly brilliant. He flinched, as though someone had poked him in the chest, in the heart, and he gave a little gasp, not quite a laugh. He went to speak, but was stuck for words. He stared at me, waiting, wanting me to go on, tell him more about himself and his talent. But I held back. I thought my words would have more power for being undiluted, and I wasn't sure I could trust myself to say anything profound. Between us, a certain formality had been peeled away to expose an embarrassing secret. I'd revealed his hunger for affirmation, praise, anything I might give. I guessed that nothing mattered more to him. His stories in the various magazines had probably gone unremarked beyond a routine thanks and pat on the head from an editor. It was likely that no one, or no stranger at least, had ever told him that his fiction was brilliant. Now he was hearing it and realizing that he had always suspected it was so. I had delivered stupendous news. How could he have known if he was any good until someone confirmed it? And now he knew it was true, and he was grateful. As soon as he spoke, the moment was broken, and the room resumed its normal tone. "Did you have a favorite?" It was such a stupid, sheepish excuse of a question that I warmed to him for his vulnerability. "They're all remarkable," I said, "but the one about the twin brothers, called This Is Love, is the most ambitious. I thought it had the scale of a novel about belief and emotion, and what a wonderful character Jean is, so insecure and destructive and alluring. It's a magnificent piece of work. Did you ever think of expanding it into a novel, filling it out a bit?" He looked at me curiously. "No, I didn't think of filling it out a bit." The deadpan reiteration of my words alarmed me. "I'm sorry, it was a stupid... It's the length I wanted, about 15,000 words. But I'm glad you liked it." Sardonic and teasing, he smiled, and I was forgiven. But my advantage had dimmed. I had never heard fiction quantified in this technical way, 15,000 words. My ignorance felt like a weight on my tongue. I said, "And the story Lovers, the man with the shop window mannequin, was so strange and completely convincing. It swept everyone away." It was now liberating to be telling outright lies. We have 2 professors and 2 well-known reviewers on our board. They see a lot of new writing. But you should have heard the excitement at the last meeting. Honestly, Tom, they couldn't stop talking about your stories. For the first time ever, the vote was unanimous. The little smile had faded. His eyes had a glazed look, as though I was hypnotizing him. This was going deep. "Well," he said, shaking himself to bring himself out of the trance, "this is all very pleasing. What else can I say?" And then he added, "Who are the 2 critics?" "We have to respect their anonymity, I'm afraid." "I see." He turned away from me for a moment and seemed lost in some private thought. Then he said, "So what is it you're offering, and what do you want from me?" "Can I answer that," I said, "by asking you a question? What will you do when you've finished your doctorate, your PhD?" "Well, I'm applying for various teaching jobs, including one here." "Full-time?" "Yes." "Well, we'd like to make it possible for you to stay out of a job, and in return you'd concentrate on your writing, including journalism if you want." He asked me how much money was on offer, and I told him. He asked for how long, and I said, let's say 2 or 3 years. "And if I produce nothing?" "We'd be disappointed, and we'd move on. We won't be asking for our money back." He took this in and then said, "And you'd want the rights in what I do?" "Oh, no. And we don't ask you to show us your work. You don't even have to acknowledge the foundation. We think that you're a unique and extraordinary talent. If your fiction and journalism gets written, published, and read, then we'll be happy. When your career is launched and you can support yourself, we'll fade out of your life. We'll have met the terms of our remit." He stood up and went round the far side of his desk and stood at the window with his back to me. He ran his hand through his hair and muttered something sibilant under his breath that might have been ridiculous or enough of this. He was looking into the same room across the lawn. Now the bearded boy was reading his essay, while his tutorial partner stared ahead of her without expression. Oddly, the tutor was speaking on the phone. Tom returned to his chair and crossed his arms. His gaze was directed across my shoulder and his lips were pressed shut. I sensed he was about to make a serious objection. I said, "Think it over for a day or 2. Talk to a friend. Think it through." He said, "The thing is," and he trailed away. He looked down at his lap and he continued, "It's this. Every day I think about this problem. I don't have anything bigger to think about. It keeps me awake at night. Always the same 4 steps. 1, I want to write a novel. 2, I'm broke. 3, I've got to get a job. 4, the job will kill the writing. I can't see a way round it. There isn't one. Then a nice young woman knocks on my door and offers me a fat pension for nothing. It's too good to be true. I'm suspicious. Tom, I said, you make it sound simpler than it is. You're not passive in this affair. The first move was yours. You wrote these brilliant stories. In London, people are beginning to talk about you. How else do you think we found you? You've made your own luck with talent and hard work. The ironic smile again, the cocked head. Progress. He said, I like it when you say brilliant. Good, brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. I reached into my bag on the floor and took out the foundation's brochure. This is the work we do. You can come to our office in Upper Regent Street and talk to the people there. You'll like them. You'll be there too? Oh, well, my immediate employer is Word Unpenned. We work closely with Freedom International and are putting money their way. They help us find the artists. I travel a lot or work from home, but messages to the foundation office will find me. He glanced at his watch and stood. So did I. I was a dutiful young woman, determined to achieve what was expected of me. I wanted Haley to agree now, before lunch, to be kept by us. I would break the news by phone to Max in the afternoon, and by tomorrow morning I hoped to have a routine note of congratulation from the director, unemphatic, unsigned, typed up by someone else, but important to me. I'm not asking you to commit to anything now, I said, hoping I didn't sound like I was pleading. You're not bound to anything at all. Just give me the say-so, and I'll arrange a monthly payment. All I need is your bank details. The say-so. I'd never used that word in my life. He blinked in assent, but not to the money so much as to my general drift. We were standing less than 6 feet apart. His waist was slender, and through some disorder in his shirt, I caught a glimpse below a button of skin and downy hair above his navel. Thanks, he said. I'll think about it very carefully. I've got to be in London on Friday. I could look in at your office. Well, then, I said, and put out my hand. He took it, but it wasn't a handshake. He took my fingers in his palm and stroked them with his thumb. Just one slow pass. Exactly that, a pass. And he was looking at me steadily. As I took my hand away, I let my own thumb brush along the length of his forefinger. I think we may have been about to move closer when there was a hearty, ridiculously loud knock on the door. He stepped back from me as he called, "Come in." The door swung open, and there stood 2 girls, centre-parted blonde hair, fading suntans, sandals and painted toenails, bare arms and sweet, expectant smiles, unbearably pretty. The books and papers under their arms didn't look at all plausible to me. "Aha," Tom said, "our Fairy Queen tutorial." I was edging round him towards the door. "I haven't read that one," I said. He laughed, and the 2 girls joined in, as if I'd made a wonderful joke. They probably didn't believe me. Thank you.